Good evening. My name is Dana Zimbicki, and I'm the president of the East Brunswick Education Association, and I'm so excited tonight to offer you our third annual Meet the East Brunswick Board of Education candidates. Now for our 5 guests of honor running for the Board of Education seats. The candidates running are sitting in ballot order. Our first candidate is Mark Carolangio, and he tonight is not feeling well, so he'll be joining us via Zoom. Our second candidate is Susanna Chu. Third, Ashish Farmer. Fourth, Laurie Lex. And fifth, Todd Simmons. Thank you for the community members who wrote questions on our Google Doc for our candidates tonight. The protocol for this evening is as follows. We have 2 timekeepers that will be holding up a 30-second sign and a time's up. Each candidate will have 1 minute for an opening statement, and each question they will be given 1 minute and 30 seconds to answer. At the end, the candidates will have 1 minute and 30 seconds for closing remarks. Thank you very much. A huge thank you to our moderator for the evening, Mary Beth Bikert. Thank you, and let's begin our event for this evening.
Good evening, Dana and audience members, and to our candidates. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to the East Brunswick Education Association for putting this together and making sure that we have the opportunity to hear from our board candidates and we can really have a good civics lesson. Before we begin, I would like you to, each of you, give me a 1-minute opening statement, starting with Mr. Simmons.
Thank you, Mary Beth, and thank you to the East Brunswick Education Association, the Pride Committee, and of course, Park and Recs for the facility. I'm a resident almost 19 years now. My wife, Michelle, and our son, Alex, are graduates of East Brunswick High School. Our daughter, Ella, is in the high school now, and our daughter, Lily, is at Hammersholt Middle School. During the day, I'm a partner with global accounting firm BDO. My professional background is I'm a lawyer and a certified public accountant during the day. Since becoming a board member, it's really quite clear what the job is. We really have to understand all the issues that come to us, whether it is policy, budget, superintendent selection, curriculum, etc. I'm running for re-election because there's still much more work to do. Now that we are in the middle of a pandemic, I think that having experience on the board is even more important than it has ever been. We are continuing to ask the superintendent what the plans are and making sure that we are making all the right decisions. Thank you.
Mrs. Lex.
My name is Laurie Lex. I'm a lifelong resident of East Brunswick, graduating from the high school in 1988. After graduating from Muhlenberg College and marrying another East Brunswick alumni, we're currently sending our 2 children to the same schools that we attended many years ago. It was my positive experience as a student here that inspired me to become involved in giving back to the community that I've always known as home. It's been a privilege to be a part of the Board of Education. I'm the current vice president, and I chair and serve on multiple committees. I'm an approachable liaison and an advocate for all the members of our community. I'm a proud and active PTA and athletic booster parent. I currently serve as a treasurer of Mayor Cohen's charity fund, and throughout the years I've worked with various civic, athletic, and religious groups. I've always prided myself in being fiscally responsible. With our tax dollars, we're working hard to provide our district with the resources needed to maintain our excellence, never losing sight of the financial impact that's placed on our town's residents. I'm running for re-election because I love this town and I love this district. I truly value being a part of the process that ensures the best education for our children and fosters an enjoyable and rewarding place for our staff to work. I pledge to continue working to maintain the highest level of excellence. And I see my time's up. I thank the EBEA for arranging this forum and for inviting me to attend.
Thank you. And Mr. Farmer.
Hello, I'm Ashish Farmer. Thanks to the EBEA to arrange this session. I'm a longtime resident of East Brunswick, 20 years already here so far. I'm very glad that I came to this town, very proud of this town. The district, the education, the progressive mindset over here, very, very proud of that. I have a daughter in the public school, and 7th grade is where she is. My wife and I are very proud of how she's developing. I am an information technology professional by the day, and financial industries. Healthcare industries is where I've been engaged in. Heavy financial tracking. I'm part of the cultural societies in the community. I'm a treasurer of the residential community that I live in. I am a treasurer of the cultural society that I'm part of. I've been president as well. So I'm involved, and I'm thankful to the community and this country to give me the opportunity. I would love to participate and give back to this community. Ashish Farmer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Verma. Mrs. Chu.
Good evening, and thanks to the EBEA and everybody here who put this event together. I'm Susanna Chu. I've been living in East Brunswick for 25 years with my husband, Joe. I've been on the Board of Education now for 6 years. We raised our 2 children here who graduated from EBHS and got the benefit of going through this outstanding school district. So by day, I'm the Director of Energy Services at PSE&G. I run energy efficiency programs. As a working mother, I was always so grateful for all the PTAs and the teachers and the staff and the administration for the hard work and dedication to the kids of this community. And while I volunteered for a lot of different organizations over the years, it seemed like when my son was a senior in high school, it was time to do more. I wanted to get more involved with the school, and I ran for a seat on the board. I believe education is the most important asset to our kids, and our teachers and staff are the most important asset of our schools. Thank you very much.
And Mr. Carangello.
Hey guys, I apologize for being at home and not feeling well, and putting everyone through this, unfortunate circumstance with me not feeling well. I'd like to thank Dana, Tom, and Mary Beth for obviously all the work they're doing for me today, as well as everyone else in the community. I'd like to thank the current board members who are running for re-election for their time, dedication, and service. I really appreciate everything you have done to make our East Brunswick board a great board, and I fully support all of you. I would like to add to the board by being elected in. I am a 55-year resident of East Brunswick. I am the founder and owner of the American Institute of Alternative Medicine. It's a private vocational school, actually on Route 18, very dedicated to East Brunswick. I'm a 1982 grad, and my daughter is in junior high school as we speak. So I really appreciate you guys' patience up there. I could see you guys sitting there, and I really appreciate what you guys are doing for me today.
Okay. Thank you, Mark. All right, let's get started. Now that we know what everybody goes through every day with technology. Okay. So as I was saying, in March, the East Brunswick Public School District went virtual just as the rest of the state did. And in September, East Brunswick adopted a hybrid plan where some students attend school in person on specific days of the week, while others are fully virtual. And today, Governor Murphy shared that there were 522 new positive COVID-19 test results and unfortunately 2 new deaths. So our first questions of the evening are based on COVID-19 and how the EBPS will continue to navigate over the next few months. So we're going to start with Ms. Lex. Our first question has 2 parts. Considering there seems to be a slow but steady increase in COVID-19 cases, how do you feel about expanding the reopening of the East Brunswick Public School during the pandemic? And how do you plan to mitigate the district's current and future financial problems due to the pandemic?
So in terms of, when you talk about expanding, you're talking about bringing children back in, more children back in?
Following
students
your
back
plan.
in? So at this point, the plan is based on what we feel the occupancy levels are, keeping everybody safe, both the staff and the students. So if the cases continue to rise, and obviously most of the community's probably heard by now of additional cases that came out today, that obviously is something that slows the district down in terms of bringing more cases in. The hybrid option was designed to try and please everyone in a world where you really can't please everyone, in that there are students, we have certain special needs students, you have the younger students, and even some of the older students that need the ability to be in a classroom. You also have students, more than half the population, that said, I am fine learning virtually. So the idea of the hybrid program was supposed to be something that was a compromise to have something to offer everyone. The hybrid program, the nice part about it is, if you take away the in-school portion, you are left with your virtual learners. Those virtual learners are doing fine, and the whole idea of the initiative with the one-to-one was that we have the ability to pull back. So that always exists for us as a potential if we feel that the numbers go up, because the last thing that anybody wants to do is put our staff or students in any type of jeopardy in terms of their health. So that's the most important thing to me as a board member, as a parent, as a human being. I don't want to see any of the children or staff in a position that is unsafe for them. So in terms of the expansion, in terms of the expansion, the last point is it's not going to happen until it's fully safe for it to happen.
Okay. We're going to come back to the second part of that question in the next round. Okay. Mr. Verma.
So we're only answering the first part of it.
Answer the first one so that we each have a same opportunity.
Right, makes sense. So the most important part here is health and safety. That comes first, life first, before anything else. So this is very dynamic situation. That itself is an understatement. We are continuously monitoring situations every day and reacting to it as and when things are developing. From the beginning, even before the school were opened, there was a lot of discussion, very healthy discussions that have been held within the board, which obviously I'm not privy to, but obviously outside of the interaction as well. So very cautiously but aggressively, East Brunswick has moved forward with the plans. But as news develops, as things came out yesterday, things are happening and we are responding to those. If these issues continue to worsen, then there is no choice but to continue to expand on the remote opportunities that we have already worked on, and it seems like things are beginning to work. So the good thing is we have seen it, how to handle it. This board, this administration has been doing pretty well into those plans. And we have seen some of those plans work. It's like if we need to go into complete remote, we have seen part of the work in that area. So I think the readiness is there. And I have high confidence in how this board and this administration can handle it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Chu.
Thank you. So from the moment that we closed the schools, the Board of Ed met with the administrative team on a weekly basis. And it was necessary in order to just keep up with all the developments and be prepared and have all the information and provide the guidance and direction to the administrative staff to do this in a way that was safe, thoughtful, cautious, and balance the needs, though, of our whole community. And as Mrs. Lex said, there's not a one-size-fits-all. There's not an answer that works for everybody. And we're here to represent the community. My opinion may differ from yours. It will differ from yours. But we have to understand all the diverse needs of our community and take that into consideration. On the upside, whether we have to go down all remote or remain hybrid, or whether there's the opportunity to increase in-person instruction, we're ready, because the plans have built all of those options in. So regardless of what direction we go into, we have the tools. The staff has had the opportunity and the students have had the opportunity. We've been very pleased with the compliance, with the safety protocols in place to test out the processes and make sure they work. So I'm confident that we have to remain flexible, but we'll be ready.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Chu. And Mr. Carangello.
Current board, you've done a great job. I couldn't have done it any better myself, and I would like to add to what they were doing. Like someone just said, that you can't please everyone, and just shutting things down or just opening up fully probably isn't the best for the diverse community that we have. So I think we have the tools to succeed, and again, I'd like to add to those tools by being elected to the board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Simmons.
Thank you. So there's really two parts to this answer. The first, of course, is the health and safety of our students and staff. And with respect to that issue, we have exceeded what the state's required. We have the hybrid option, but of course parents are able to opt to have their children out. It's working well. We have no cases of spread in school. If, depending on the direction of things, if they do get worse, our district is ready to respond and to do whatever the state requires. If that means that we're going to be home completely remotely, we will do that. The district's also ready to go the other way. If things start to get markedly better, we have a plan to begin to get back to a bit of normalcy. And so that is, these are all in the works and ready to go. The district has a plan ready for that. The second component to this is delivery of instruction. One thing I have to say is that if we go back to March and we compare it to today, it is just night and day. No teacher that I'm aware of really learns how to teach remotely, at least maybe they are doing that a bit more now, just by necessity. But teachers have just stepped up and are able to deliver instruction, whether it's remotely, in the classroom, or some combination. We are continuing to look for ways to enhance that and make sure that every student, whether you're at home or you're in the classroom, is getting the same attention and the same results in terms of instruction.
Okay, so I want to just go to the second part of the question about, as board members, how would you plan on mitigating the district's current and future financial problems due to the pandemic? And I think, Ms. Lax, it was your turn to start, so I'm going to let you go back.
It's a tough question. I wish I could tell you that I had an answer. We don't know what the financial impact is going to be. We are presented with a budget each year. We put out a budget that meets the needs of the current year. When we did that this past year, COVID didn't exist, or actually, I should say that COVID, we didn't know what was going to happen and what the needs were going to be. We spent a good portion of money on our one-to-one initiative. I believe we spent around $1 million in technology. Half of that came out of our budget. The other half came out of the CARES Act. So I am hoping that going forward, school districts are going to get more aid from the state to help us to recoup this gap, because the reality is, do I think right now we could take in the kind of hits that are coming with this type of COVID world expanding beyond the next few months or even the next school year? No, we're going to need help. So do I have the answers today? I wish I could tell you that I do. I don't know what the plan would be. We're constantly looking at ways and initiatives to cut costs, but this is something that is unprecedented. So for me to tell you exactly where that money will come from, I don't know. Again, hoping that grant funding will be there for us the way it was in terms of the initiative for the devices, because again, we don't know if we're going to be done with this next month and opening the schools. Obviously, probably not, or if this is something that's going to be years out.
Thank you very much. Mr. Verma.
Thank you for the question. I absolutely agree with my friend Laurie over here. She's a good friend of mine. Completely agree with what you said. One good thing is she also has the experience within the board, what she's seen, and absolutely true. We don't know what we don't know yet. And the challenges are very, very interesting and challenging. So here's the aspect that I want to bring in, that while I still completely agree with the fact that we don't know, all the solutions over there to handle that scenario with financial as well as the remote learning challenges would be all linked with financial responsibility of how we handle, like 63% of the tax goes into the school system. There's a lot of room there, but then at the same time, the type of technological improvements required over there is going to be the challenging part. And we need the best for our kids, for the teachers as well, to make them, to empower them is the right word, to empower them to use the technology for the right education involvement of kids. It's all new for them, suddenly spiking up. So this is the aspect where I would say, while I agree we don't have the answer, that's true, but this is where I would also love to come in and chip in and help with my technology background. 20 years I've been into that area, program management, financial handling as well. So I would love to get in and solve some of those challenges.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, and Mrs. Chu.
So as I mentioned in the previous response, starting in March, we began to meet weekly. And as part of of those weekly discussions, we immediately started to talk about the impact to the budgets and began to take actions to look at options to mitigate the uncertainty in the budgets, the loss of the revenues that we would normally see from revenue generating programs that, basically disappeared. And there were tough choices to be made. There was a budget that we were all very excited about. We were going to be adding, additional space to address some increase in enrollments, and all of that quickly put aside, shift, and begin to look at mitigation plans and ways to close the budget in a very short amount of time. So that was accomplished. And at the end of the day, this is a budget. Our budget is about 85%, labor, labor and fringes and benefits. We are a people business. It is about people. And these are tough choices that we have to make to determine how we move forward in the future, and we're going to have to continue to evaluate the budgets carefully. As we evolve with this hybrid remote situation, it's unclear how much longer it's going to go on. So as a board, we just have to be prepared to continue to roll our sleeves up, buckle down, and work with our strong administrative team to figure it out.
Thank you. Mr. Carangello.
Again, this is a hard question to answer. It all depends on how long this crisis goes on. I'm confident we will get more funding. It's hard to say the answer today, obviously, and the other board members have said some very smart, intelligent things to move forward. I'm confident that we will get the resources in our budget and maybe allocate different resources back and forth. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and Mr. Simmons.
So at the federal and state level, some things are being done. We have grants for technology. We're giving meals to every student now because of the state, and we appreciate that very much. But most of the activity really, when it comes to budgeting, is happening at the local level. We have been really tasked with prioritizing in a way we've never done before. We really have to start to figure out where our money has to go, and understanding that, for example, we're not in the buildings as much, so therefore we don't have some of the costs of being in the buildings, but at the same time we can't use them as a revenue generator as much as we used to. So there's a source of revenue we can't rely on. So we do have to sort of shift a bit. When it comes to technology in particular, because I think that is probably one of the most important tools that we have to account for in terms of budgeting, we seem to have planned very well. Every student has a device, whether it's a Chromebook or a laptop, and that is really the window between the students and their teachers in their classroom. It's still very difficult. We still have to figure out where our money is going to be needed and prioritize, and it is very uncertain. But I do think that going forward, we have an understanding of what our needs are, whether we are in school, out of school, or in some combination of both.
Thank you very much. Mr. Verma, we're going to start with you for the next question. And since you all mentioned technology, we're going to expand on that. So whether students are being taught in person or learning virtually from home, technology has become a major requirement in order for our schools to remain successful. So what are your feelings on the district technology plan, and what would you change going forward? And then there's a follow-up. What do you see as the ideal implementation level of technology in classroom instruction?
All right. Thank you for the question. This is right in the area of my expertise as well. Now, I am seeing what I'm seeing as a pattern. So I don't have the privilege of inside board and administration details, but this is the area where we have to look into and further improve. There are certain challenges that I'm seeing as a parent and as a kid, but there's a lot of improvement I've seen already in the board, and pretty proud of how things are being handled. I see that there are certain things that I do have plans to talk to, the board and specifically the technology director as well, to further up on things that can be improved. There is never really a limit of how well you can improve on. So there's never really a, things that you can continue improving upon. So I would say the details of that I certainly have planned to discuss with the technology director, but what's the part two you asked?
And part two is, what do you see as the ideal implementation of technology in
Right.
classroom instruction?
So that question is a bit tough to answer. Relevant to each school. I have seen professional world out there, right? I have that first-hand experience. Now it would be unfair to really translate that into the school administration. So I would say I would skip answering that because it will be unfair for me to compare that.
Okay,
So, but I do have plans to discuss.
thank you, that's fair. And Mrs. Chu?
So I think the key to success, regardless of the topic, so here we're talking about technologies to remain ahead of the curve. And as Mr. Simmons said earlier, we had already embarked on a one-on-one or a one-to-one initiative with technology, going months before the pandemic hit. But even before that, the district conducted a thorough, in-depth evaluation of the technology in our schools, both our capabilities as well as the delivery of technology and instruction. And using a professional outside firm, neutral, to look at it, provide recommendation, technology department was overhauled, and there's significant training, redesign of the organization, reassessment of the technology that was rolled out, both from a hardware, software perspective, and committees were developed where teachers, staff, and the technology department worked together to understand how to apply technology in the classroom. So the most important, the part to that answer is ask the teachers. The teachers are the experts in technology and how to apply it in the classrooms.
Great, thank you very much. Mr. Carangello?
From what I've seen from March until now, the improvement of the presentation and the preparedness of the teachers has been pretty vast. However, I've seen a lot of hacking going on, and my daughter has been subject to that as well, which everyone probably knows. So if we could figure out how to make things more secure, that would go a long way in preparedness for us. That way our children aren't exposed to certain types of people interjecting online and hacking our systems. Like someone just said, more efficient firms to utilize the presentations and things like that. So we could have more efficient companies assist us. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you very much. Mr. Simmons?
We have made incredible strides in our technology, both operationally in the back office, delivery of instruction, which we're seeing now in real time, and as a curriculum area, a content area. I think that we have some room to grow as well. Now, one of the frustrations is that much of what we need really is classroom. We need to have more sophisticated technology available in the classroom, and we can't do that right now because of the pandemic. But we certainly are planning, and we understand and know what we need to do. And some of those things, are sort of the more sophisticated smart boards, more interactive things. We use them, as kids are in the classrooms. As a content area, I think, and I was talking about this the other day with one of our assistant superintendents, this exercise, putting it mildly, that we're going through right now really does open up other areas of study in computers. For example, how to teach, how to learn virtually, how to communicate on Zoom, how to how you just change over to that. I think there's a lot that we can do. I think that as our kids age up and they move on to higher education, they're going to be expected to do that. I'd like to see, in addition to sort of more sophisticated technology, making sure that we continue to bolster our curricular area in computer use as well.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Lax?
So the fact that we did invest in the infrastructure, we upped our bandwidth and did all the things that have made it possible for the one-on-one and the working that's going on a daily basis with these students has been terrific. Technology was something that I thought was great that I never had in the classroom, and I was the days of microfiche and going into encyclopedias, and I thought it was amazing that the kids could sit in a classroom and have computer time and go on to things like Newsella. So this generation is unbelievable with technology. I always say if you want to know how to do something, you ask a teenager, because they know more about it than we do. So I feel from a technology standpoint, there's always something, because technology is always growing, there's always something for us to be doing better and to be learning. In terms of the ideal implementation, I think we're doing it as ideal as we can for right now. I think it's growing, and the more that we do with technology and the more of our online schooling progresses, I think we need to look at how best to do things like labs and some of the hands-on, because that's the one thing, unfortunately, we're missing. So I've sat in, and listened through the doorway to some of the classes that my kids are having, and certainly in some areas, if you go into the ILA or the history department, you can have wonderful conversations. But with some of the areas that I think that are going to be difficult, and I think we need to figure out how to master at some point, are going to be things like in the science and the math, the more hands-on things, because that's something that I think it's hard to say that we can have idea without having that ability.
Thank you very much. All right, and Ms. Chu, ready for our next question. What is your vision to make the East Brunswick Public School District a leader in racial equity with inclusive curriculum and culturally responsive pedagogy?
So the question with regard to how do we make East Brunswick a leader in, in racial areas, this is a topic that's very near and dear to my heart. I've been a member, including on the leadership team, of the East Brunswick Human Relations Council for many, many years, and that was one of my passions that I served on prior to joining the board. And I'm currently the Human Relations Council representative from the board on the Human Relations Council. And I think that it's a comprehensive approach to to just helping children to understand and to learn and to see. And that includes not just what you learn in school, right? What you learn at home, what you get out of the community, taking advantage of community programs that can support, just better understanding amongst people, leveraging all those resources together to help our children to understand the value of diversity and respect, and not just tolerance. I really don't like the word tolerance. It's beyond tolerance. It's about really valuing and respecting each other. And so taking advantage of all the resources community-wide, not just in the schools, and making sure that we provide role models that children can emulate and look up to.
Thank you. Mr. Carangello.
When I grew up in East Brunswick many years ago, I'm 55, we were more of a, European type of community, but now we're very different, which is I'm very grateful for. So we really need to teach our children about the different diverse cultures that we have in East Brunswick. I do that with my daughter all the time, and she has a lot of different cultured friends, and we like to partake in their culture. So we have to have a better understanding of each culture, and we can teach that maybe in class or some other programs that we could implement. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons.
We have to start very early, and I'm talking kindergarten. We need to embrace in our course offerings, our curricular programs, diversity and embracing each other, and that starts in the beginning. As you age up in the high school, we have added more and more courses that look at particular areas of history and teach our students about how we get through certain things, how we respond and react. So the first thing I would say would be our course offerings in the way that and the curriculum that we have. Secondly, it's modeling, and it's modeling coming from both our staff and our students. We have students that are leaders in various areas. We have clubs and activities that model great behavior, that talk about and enjoy diversity. Those are the things that we have to continue to get the word out on, and that we continue to have programs that center around some of those clubs and activities. I think we can certainly do a better job at that as well. I also think that there's some things that we can do outside of school. You know, our kids are out for, you know, most of the time when they're not here, and we want to send them off with the right tools to deal with issues that come up. Knowing what to say, knowing what not to say, and knowing when to speak up. Those are things that I think we can also do a much better job arming our kids with when they leave.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Lax.
I'm actually going to take what Mr. Simmons said, and I'm going to go back a little further. I think it starts before the kids get to school. Personally, I think that as parents, it is our job to teach and raise good children. I think the school system comes in, and they're wonderful, and they help us, but the reality is, if hatred is being taught in the home, it's very difficult for a school system to undo that. I think we do everything we can. There are programs, there are clubs of every different nature. I think these kids have gone to school, and as Mr. I'm sorry if I'm screwing up your name, Mr. Carangello said, I grew up in this town too, and most people looked like me, and that's not the case. And my children have been raised not to see color. And that's something that the school district needs to enrich, not to necessarily teach. As programs are there, but the reality is you have to hope that the parents are teaching their kids the right things from the beginning. We can only take those kids and make them better people, hopefully, because we're giving them a little bit more of the outside world. But the reality is these children have grown up in a world where they've met children that look, that think, that love, that pray differently than they do. And it's such a beautiful world. And so the school system and the clubs and the classes, they teach them everything that's gone on in the world, but they're the ones that are going to make sure that these things happen. So I appeal to the parents and to the kids themselves. You know, if you don't have hate in your heart, then you don't need someone to teach you anything better.
Thank you. And Mr. Verma.
Yeah, thank you for the question. This is very important to the hearts of everybody here. So, East Brunswick Township, and as I mentioned in my introduction as well, that something that I really feel proud of is the rich diversity that is over here. Very, very good mix of diversity over here. I think it starts with understanding of what the spirits of or different cultures, and it all boils down to peace and love. I do resound what Mr. Locke said, that it's not just the school, it equally works in the homes and families as well. It works together, hand in hand, not only in this topic, but others as well, but especially in this one. So, but in terms of school, which is where the question is here, we need to absolutely start early, as Mr. Timmons also said. We need to have the programs which allow for inclusion of all the celebrations that we can do. We have to celebrate the diversity over here, give opportunity for cultural activities that happen, which happen to show various ways of how rich that culture is. There are, you know, if you dig down, it all comes down to the similar good lessons that come from every culture anyway. But it's a matter of understanding correctly. I've seen some spirits not being understood correctly, and that misunderstanding leads to some other challenges. But I think we can do quite a bit over there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, Mr. Carangello, we're going to start with you. And our question is regarding redevelopment of East Brunswick, particularly along Route 18. So we know that many new homes will be built in the near future. And what is your vision for dealing with the increasing student enrollment in our schools in both the short and long term?
Great question. Considering the building that my school is in the redevelopment zone, and I'll need to move, which I will gladly do to help the township. With regards to more children coming in, I think we may need more schools, and adding on to the schools that we already have may not be the answer. So we really need to add more schools to, allow for the children that are coming in. I would hope that there would be some budget for that in our future, but not being on the board and not being privy to that, I wouldn't know if they would go for that. But I really do think we need more schools, not adding on to the schools that we already have, such as Central or Irwin or whatever. I think we really need to, again, finally add more schools, and I think we'll be all right. I think we'll be all right with that.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons?
So a few years ago, we had at a public meeting, a report done on capacity and sort of, we're always looking at the short, medium, and long-term capacity needs. And this, of course, redevelopment is front and center. And so I think the big issue that redevelopment presents, as I think we're going to probably hear from most folks, is capacity. It's, do our current schools have enough room for any of these expected expansions in the district, or do we have to look at other buildings? So we look at that with some frequency. I can't say, with any certainty which way the district would go. We would really have to see where the new folks would be. And we also have to do age studies and figure out where they'd be coming in. Would they be coming in elementary? Would they be coming in the upper schools? And that also will impact how we will address capacity issues. So, it is something that we are on, as I indicated, with some frequency. We check in quite a bit. I will say, COVID has sort of put that not on the back burner, but it's not the priority right now. But I do look forward to when we get back to those discussions, because things are happening, and we are going to need to be ready right away to be able to open schools for whatever population we do have.
Thank you. Mrs. Lax?
So if you were asking us this a year ago, that would be the forefront of what we were talking about. How do we deal with the capacity? Because class size is something that's very important to us and to the parents and the students. And we've had serious growth in the past before this redevelopment's come along. So that's obviously been an issue. Of course, it has been put on the back burner because right now we don't have the capacity issue in the schools because unfortunately we can't put our kids in the schools. That being said, it's something that we have to look to when things calm down, because we will have an overcrowding issue if all of this redevelopment brings in new students. So it's something that we're constantly talking about and working on. We will have to go back to that because the buildings are aging, some of them, and of course there isn't the actual capacity. So these are things that are constantly discussed. One of the nice things is we do have outside planners, we have architects that talk about what some of our options are. We don't know, again, with the school, where the kids were going. And quite honestly, it brings up, and I hate to say the very, very bad word, redistricting, because one of the things that you may have to look at is the efficiencies of transporting children from one school to another and where the school's children are going to be. So unfortunately, that may be something that I hate to say, because I was an elementary parent once and I remember what it was like to think, oh, if my child had to go here. But I think for the good of the town, it may be something that's going to factor into how we deal with the aging buildings and the growth of the township and the town's kids.
Thank you. On to Mr. Verma.
Thank you. So growth of population is obviously evident with some of the redevelopment happening. A year back, as Ms. Lax said, even 2 years back, it actually was not a problem. And the last 2 years, we have seen the growth even before the redevelopment, some of the construction that are happening. So this is not just because of some of the newer communities coming in, but it had already begun earlier than that. Even more so a problem now with the new developments coming in. So yes, there is a very important need for thinking creatively. There will not really be a ton of budget to go and just go build out schools, etc. There has to be some more creativity into that. And I know that some of these things are being discussed in the board as well. There are a lot of different ideas going in. So things could be about fixing some of the facilities that we have, creatively repurposing it in different ways. There could be different buildings that we could think about, and redevelopment plan, etc. Also, I think we can very, very closely work with the township, some of the redevelopment plans that are happening there, creatively work with the new builders who are coming in, work it in a way, and I was discussing this a bit with the township council and the mayor as well. There are ways we can really work out something. So yes, a problem, but yes, there is a solution that we can work out.
Mrs. Chu.
As Mr. Verma mentioned before, that even before COVID hit, right, we're seeing an increase in enrollment. And in fact, the hot topic of the day before COVID hit was putting in temporary classrooms and the need to do so in order to address the increasing enrollment. So of course that got quickly put aside because of the change that we're now in, and as both Mr. Simmons and Mrs. Lax indicated, this is a long-term priority of the Board of Education, is to continuously evaluate the needs, the facility needs, right? So I mentioned in my opening statement, our most important asset are our staff and our teachers. But obviously they need a place to work and in a place where they can provide the environment where everybody will be successful and not crowded into classrooms, certainly not crowded in these days, right? So that's a priority that is going to come back to the forefront, as we work through our current environment. And it takes years, right, to build new buildings. That'll take years. And so the board will need to continue to evaluate options and consider what is the most efficient, effective way to deal with the increase in enrollment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, our next question is pretty simple, and it asks your opinion on your position on subcontracting or privatization of services, and does privatization work? And I believe, Mr. Simmons, we are starting with you.
It is not always the best way to deal with an issue, but it can be efficient, especially in times when our budgets are shrinking and shrinking, and the state gives us less and less aid. The first example that comes to mind is our child nutrition function. We did privatize the leadership while keeping our own staff, which was thankfully a good result because we were able to do that. Some of our services are privatized. Some of our busing is, some of our custodial work is privatized, some is not. And what I think we've been very good at is striking a balance between how much we privatize and how much we don't. I'd love everybody to be our own employees. There is nothing better than getting on a school bus with one of our very own and getting greeted by them, or being in a lunch line and having our own people cook for you and take care of your lunch. But in today's world, when, as I indicated, we're getting less and less money from the state, we have to start to look at optimizing how we are spending some of these dollars. And I think where we are now is we find that point that strikes a balance, again, between privatizing and keeping our own folks, that's as efficient as we can get. Again, not ideal, but I think it's the world we're in, and we try very, very hard to not go that route, but when we do, we have to do it and strike that balance.
Thank you. Mrs. Lax.
I agree that our hands are tied on a lot of things. My personal opinion is I'm not for privatization because I agree. I like to have our own people. I like to know that there are staff members. So wherever possible, that's my preference, to have anybody working for the East Brunswick school system be an East Brunswick school system employee. The hope is to try and keep as much of that as we can in this world. I agree with what Mr. Simmons is saying, that sometimes there are necessities. So far we've been able to strike that balance, and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to keep doing what we're doing so that we are not privatizing any more departments.
Mr. Verma?
Thank you. So it's not by fun or enjoyment that anybody would like to just subcontract and privatize. And I think the idea is to really be able to do the work efficiently, optimize the way things are happening. I see in the professional world as well, where I work on negotiations linked with contracting, and I have a staff. The best thing we could do is really optimize our staff, get working with them so that we can really do as much as possible in the most effective way as possible. There are times when discussions will just lead to the cost benefit being subcontracting or private. So it's a difficult conversation, and But it goes without saying that as much as possible, we got to do better with what we have, maximize that, see how we can continue doing better with what we got, and try not going the privatization or subcontracting way. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Chu.
I think it is not a question of privatizing or not privatizing. I don't think anybody would want to privatize something just for the sake of privatizing. I think the broader question is, how do we deliver the best educational services to our kids? And how do we take care of our number one asset, our people, right? And be responsible to the taxpayers in this town and balance all of that. And so the first thing is, efficiency, right? So we look at a lot of ways to deliver efficiency, and examples of that include co-op purchasing with other districts, working with the New Jersey Educational Service Commission, with the township, with the county, all the different opportunities available to reduce costs. And as I said, our most important asset are our people. And we have to make sure that our people understand, number one, we value all the people. This is a people business. Our kids wouldn't be where they are without our people. And that if there are times when there are hard decisions that have to be made, that may happen, right? So there are trade-offs that eventually have to be considered. So you can't rule out any option. But is it the first option? No, of course not. It's not something that somebody goes out and says, well, let me look to see how I could privatize. Let's look for all the other opportunities first and leverage the resources that we have.
Thank you very much. Mr. Carangelo.
Great question, guys, and great answers so far. I'd like to add subcontracting has its place, and blending that with our people in town is probably the best way to do it. In-house seems better, but it can't always work out that way. There's no actual easy answer, and I'm confident that the board will make a great solution in reducing costs. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Lax, we're going to start with you. So as a board member, how would you mitigate the impact of the $3+ million which the district is required to send to the Hactiva Charter School? Especially considering that school funding issues are, you're seeing a decrease here in East Brunswick.
So as you know, we are mandated by the state to send funds to Hactiva. It's not something that the Board of Education chose to do. It is a deficit that we have to make up each year. It's just become a part of our budget. So again, things like enterprises, which this year are very difficult because our community programs was one of our biggest enterprises. Our JM PAC has been sitting empty. Those were ways that we were doing. Those were things we were doing to bring in the additional funds. But unfortunately, in terms of having to give those funds to Hactiva, and I'm not sure if you're asking just how we make up the funds or how do I feel about it. Personally, Hactiva is there. As I said, it's millions that come out of our budget, and we do work very hard to come up with those funds. And it is, cost efficiencies, creative thinking in terms of community programs and anything else in terms of enrichment that we can bring in additional funds. It's a hard question for me to answer because I didn't choose to have Hactiva, and it's another one of the state mandates that we then have no choice but to fund. So.
Great, thanks very much. Mr. Verma.
Thank you. This particular question is linked with something that I'm not really very well familiar with. Obviously, it is a mandate. The board is following that. So, in general, I can say there could be efficiencies that we can find how to do things better and use our facilities better to come up with ideas of how to optimize and get more funds in based on those practices. But particularly about that $3 million aspect, I wouldn't really have a comment on, especially given that I'm not in the board already.
Would you care to comment as a taxpayer?
Absolutely.
As a parent?
So again, the state mandates is what board has to follow, right? So again, the reasoning, etc., I will not go into because that's where outside of mine. But 63% of the tax of every person, whether the kids go to school or not, goes towards the school board. So obviously, anything going on with that money, and if it is well spent, is what everybody's concern would be. So if there's a room of negotiation over there, I would certainly look at that. But given the mandate, that's where I'm getting thrown off here, not knowing about the logistic of that. But if possible, if there's some negotiation possible over there, whatever the school board can do to show responsibility as a financial responsibility towards the money being coming in from the residents would be important. I would just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mrs. Chu.
So, as a taxpayer, and you kind of asked us to frame it in that perspective as well, as a taxpayer, I personally see no reason for a charter school in a leading school district such as East Brunswick. So that said, that is a state mandate, and we're required to fund this school. And years ago, before I joined the Board of Ed, found a way to close the budget gap. And, over time, it's just, I think as Mrs. Lax said, has been built into the budget, and it's been dealt with as a component that we just take it out right off the top. We know that $3 million has to come out. If we had $3 million extra, wow, what else we could do, right? Because a lot of our costs are fixed. So you can look at the costs and say, well, you're deducting based on the number of students that are going over to Hatikva. In fact, a lot of our costs are fixed. So if that funding were to be returned to us, we'd certainly have a lot more opportunities. So it's over the years become, baked into the budget, and we found a way to manage without it. And as a taxpayer, would I love to see those students back with our leading school district? I sure would.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Carangello.
I'm not exactly sure how to answer this, but I guarantee the board, as they are describing right now, are doing their best to find a resolution together, and I'd like to add to that. Again, we're married to the budget, so if we did have an extra $3 million, it would be a great way to, again, add technology or other resources, maybe having more teachers in the classroom to assist the children. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Simmons.
We've already fought the philosophical fight as to whether or not we should have a charter school in East Brunswick, as Mrs. Chu's pointing out. We do the job better. We can teach our kids better than any other district, and we say that all the time. Now, from a budgetary perspective, though, remember that the charter school is open not just to East Brunswick students. So the $3 million that we budget, which is huge, it's not all spent. So it's not a pure $3 million hit. It is a huge hit, but thankfully, the way that budgets work in New Jersey school districts, it sort of reverses a little bit, but we are still left with a very big hole. And as many folks have pointed out, what we could do with that additional funding, we could reduce class sizes, we could get additional technology, we could enhance staffing, we could fill a lot of budgetary holes that we have right now. My hope is that at some point they fix the budgetary issue, because we are forced to account for $3 million, as you point out, each budget year, and that is money that we cannot spend on other things. We could also provide tax relief with some of that money. I don't think we need one in East Brunswick as a taxpayer. Like I said, we have marvelous public schools. I wouldn't be here if I didn't think we did. And so a charter school here just doesn't seem to make sense.
Great. Okay. So during the 2018-2019 school year, the East Brunswick Board of Education made a proposal to change the cycle program at the Hammersgold Middle School, which would have reduced the time students spend studying the arts in order to extend math instructional time. How do you feel about this idea? And I believe we're going to start with you, Mr. Verma.
All right. Yeah, this was a very debatable question that came up during that time. As you remember, the discussions over there, and I'm glad the item did not, really sustain. We all understand, and I'm glad we showed that as a decision made. We all understand that there has to be a right balance between the various aspects of what is taught to a student as an all-rounder, because that's what we really want. We cannot have unbalanced development in the students. Science, math, all important, and so is the right balance with the right brain, left brain, and music, arts. There are various sports activities, all. So particularly art, etc., is very important. I'm very passionate about art myself in various forms, and I certainly welcome the idea that it was very nicely pushed back. And if anything like that comes up again, I'm sure we will continue to do so. The balance is very important.
Thank you. Mrs. Chu.
Yes, so first of all, I'm not an expert in curriculum. I'm not an expert in anything, actually. And if you track my career, I've worked in a lot of different areas. I've built solar farms, I've done strategic planning, but I've never been a teacher, and I've never been an administrator. Fortunately, though, for East Brunswick, we do have a lot of people who are experts. And I have to say how impressed I've been with the caliber and the quality and the passion of the people that work for this district. And those are the people that I would turn to for the answers. So back in 2018, 2019, if I recall correctly, there was no final determination made as to changes that needed to occur. Our motto is academics, athletics, and the arts. All of them. Not just one, not one at the expense of another. We have to balance it all. So if we're not meeting state mandated requirements for time spent on certain subjects, we've got to fix that. We've got to look at that. If we're short in one area, we have to look at how to balance. So it's not about sacrificing one area for another. It's about balancing all three so that we can support the whole child, not just focus on one area. And I'm confident that our experts will come up with a great solution.
Terrific. And Mr. Carangello.
Well, Ms. Chu said it the best. We have to make sure we stay within every class that needs to be done, and we can't just have more of art or less of something else. But I am so in favor of art of expression, whether it be singing, music. It's just a way to grow and learn. And again, getting back to our cultures, maybe we could bring in different cultures of their arts into our schools. And that way we can bring, all the children together. Say there could be a Chinese, art projects for kids, and then maybe, the Native American. So I'm very in favor of arts. My daughter has been in art shows. She's a great artist. So she's at her happiest when she's drawing or singing or playing music. So for me, art is important. But as Ms. Chu said, balance is important, and we have to maintain that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons.
One of the reasons that we looked at Hammarskjöld curriculum is because we are a little bit short in the amount of time in health in Hammarskjöld that state requires. And so the proposal was to, right now we have a double period of English and a single period of math. So the proposal was to add a double period of math. Now I personally think that's a bit too much of a day. To have a double period of English and a double period of math is half your day almost. It's too much at that age group. So one thing I would have favored was alternating, maybe a double period of English one day, a double period of math the other day, and single periods those alternating days. That would have kept the cycles as they were. And that's what I wanted to do, is continue to keep the cycle program as it was, making sure that we could tweak it to get the right amount of health time. But I also advocated at the time, and still do, that we take a look at our elective program. That's different from the cycles. The electives are your AB days, and add more arts choices to those electives. For example, right now we have some music, we have some STEM and computer choices, or family consumer science. I would have added maybe a full theater class that you'd have all year every other day. Think other choices in that area. Because arts are one of the things you can do in the middle of the day as a class versus athletics. Say that's more of an after-school type activity. And so that's the model that I would have favored, and hopefully we'll get back into that discussion soon.
Terrific. And Ms. Lex?
So yes, this discussion came out of a need for increased health time and the fact that we felt that the math program needed some additional time. It was actually a very interesting development when we had the teachers and the students come out, and especially the ones in the arts. And of course, I'm so impressed with our students all the time, but you had a lot of kids there that were passionate about their need for theater, their need for art, because it's very true. Not every kid is an academic, and not every kid is going to find their niche on an athletic field. So the arts are unbelievably important for self-development, and for some of these children who may struggle socially or finding, the place that they fit in, or if academics are not their strong suit, it's something that we never intended to take away from these children. So it was one of those things that was tough, because you felt that you were trying to do what you needed to do to make sure that we're meeting the state mandates and that we're giving the students the classes that they needed. But at the same time, you really didn't want to see children and staffers feel as though they were being dissed, for lack of a better word, that we were going to take something away from them. That was never the intention. So because of the outcry from the community, this was something that was put on a back burner. And at some point, I think we will discuss how best to make sure that we're meeting those mandates, but never in a way that's ever going to take away from our arts programs. And the hope is, just like when these kids get to Churchill and the high school, there's a lot more arts programs available to them and choices.
Thank you very much. Well, so our evening is just about coming to an end, but before we go, we would like to offer you the opportunity to share with the audience a closing statement. And I believe, Mrs. Chu, we're going to begin with you.
Okay. Well, thank you again for putting together this wonderful forum to give us an opportunity to speak with all of you. And, thank you for your trust in me to serve over the past 6 years. If I'm reelected, I would be very proud and pleased to continue to represent all of you to address all the challenges that we have coming up. And I think experience is important right now. This is unprecedented times that we have to deal with. We need to have experience on the board. I, just want to reiterate my thanks to the staff, the teachers, the administrators. They have been working so hard. And when I look at teachers in the classrooms, they're working double hard. They are teaching kids virtually. They're teaching kids in the classroom. They are working harder than they've ever worked. So please, accept my heartfelt shout out and thanks to all the teachers and the administrators.
Thank you. Mr. Carangello.
I'd like to thank you guys on the stage there for all your time and effort. Again, I definitely admire the board, and I like to add to the board. And as someone just said, I don't know who was speaking, but the teachers do a great job. I see the great improvement from March until now. And if elected, I will do my best. I have 28 years of educational experience owning a private vocational school and a lifelong resident. I'm very honored, and I will do my best to serve our community and everyone in our township. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons.
When I ran for the board for the first time, my reasons were a little bit different than they are now for running for re-election. Then I sort of bright-eyed and think I could take on the world and help as however I could. Now, having learned the components of the district, how it operates, the various areas that the board is responsible for, such as curriculum and policy and the budget, I understand how much more valuable my contributions are and have been in my time on the board. It takes a while to learn the ropes, but I do think that during my time I've helped make good decisions. We've accomplished a lot. put the pandemic aside, we are serving our kindergartners full-time now. We have very great buildings that we've either rebuilt or enhanced. We are still a model in the state. People move here because they want to go to our schools. I'd like to think that the board has something to do with that. Now that we have a pandemic, I do believe that experience is very, very important. We understand the items and things that we have to pay very close attention to, and I think that experience has been helpful in getting us through this. We still got a long way to go, but I do hope to continue to work for the district as I have been. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. Mrs. Lax.
You know, I stated before that I'm a lifelong resident, and I wanted to get involved with the board almost 10 years ago because I was so thrilled with my education here. There are currently 3 members of the board that graduated from this high school. That tells you something. People don't just move to East Brunswick because of the education that their children are going to get. People stay. And I can't tell you how many of my friends and how many of the people that I talk to in town are classmates, or a few younger, a few older, but they're here because this is an incredible town. I've truly loved being on the board. I hope to do it for another 3 years. And it's because of the fact that not only do I have 2 children in the district, but now I have 8,000, over 8,000 kids. And I've really liked being a part of their lives, a part of the fabric of the schools. I had excellent teachers. When I first got on the board, some of my teachers were still there. I actually, cute anecdote, had a fight with my husband at our first back to school night because he told me that my daughter's gym teacher was his teacher at Hammersholt, and I said, that's impossible, she's younger than you. It was. So I love seeing the staff that I've gotten to know as a parent, some I knew as a student. I can't thank you enough. I know this is difficult because the reality for our staff is you're human beings too. You're parents, just like we are. You're doing the best you can in a world that's unbelievable, and teaching 2 kids in front of you and on the screen, and having to make sure that you're getting not just the educational needs of those children met, but some of the psychological too. I thank you for everyone. Thank you for the forum, the ability to be here, and I appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you. Mr. Verma.
Well, thank you to the East Brunswick Education Association to have this session and the opportunity to address people. I am fortunate to come to this country and live and take benefit of the opportunities over here. Really appreciate the inclusive environment that is there in the country, and especially in this town. Been here 20 plus years. And I come from an educator family. My mother, my father, both teachers, both retired as principals. My sister, so I've seen everybody in my family has been into educator. I've seen the love, the pain, the effort, that the things that go on around the education family, and the teachers, what they do. It had to be, I think it's the calling, it had to be somewhere that I had to come out and help out in this area. Not only to say as thanks to the teaching community that already does that, to the education that I've been part of, but also thanks to the opportunity that I got as an immigrant coming over here 5 years back. So it's an opportunity where I can leverage my technology experience, my professional technology experience, program management, financial background into, especially at this time where this country is facing so many challenges and there are a lot of technology choices that we have to make correctly. Heavy investment, correct decisions. So Ashish Farmer, thank you for your time and attendance.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for giving of your time and for your commitment to our students and our staff, and your commitment to making the East Brunswick Public School District what it is today. And on behalf of the East Brunswick Education Association, I would like to say thank you and good luck.